This program contains graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised.
November 18th, 2006. Two brothers set out to commit the perfect murder.
These guys were obsessed with all things crime and criminal. They watched CSI repeatedly.
CSI, a television crime drama that gives viewers a front row seat into the inner workings of a forensic crime lab.
I think that people enjoy shows that put us inside the criminal mind.
Brothers Mark and James Baigent believe they've watched enough episodes of CSI to commit the perfect crime.
The brothers were sure they knew all the ways to pull off a perfect murder. You make sure that that body is never found. And if it is found, you make sure the police can't identify it.
So when their worst nightmare turns grief into rage, Mark and James look to CSI to guide them.
In Mark and James's mind, they had bottled up their hatred for so long that now they were ready to explode.
Revenge is the motivation to fool the police and commit a shocking CSI copycat crime.
At a certain point, for both Mark and James, killing Andrew was the most important thing in their life.
Everyone who's met Mark Baigent and his brother James knows the two aren't to be trifled with.
The reputations tell us that they were bullies. These were two brothers you didn't want to tangle with. These were brothers that were capable of doing anything in order to get what they wanted.
They've been together their whole lives, and they really don't seem to be a good influence on each other.
Hey, bro.
Raised by their mother, Linda, the brothers' home life is somewhat unorthodox.
Linda has a couple of kids with two different men, and she really seems to not be able to make up her mind who she wants to be with. So she's with one and then the other and goes back and forth multiple times between the two different fathers of her children.
While Mark and James have similar personalities, their older half-brother, Andrew, couldn't be more different.
Andrew is not like his half-brothers at all. While they're the neighborhood toughs, he's shy, he's quiet, and he's reserved.
The boys didn't share the same fathers. Andrew had a different father. So it is possible, it's very, very possible, that Andrew inherited the traits of his biological father, whereas Mark and James inherited the temperament and personality of their father. It certainly makes for a good story.
Despite the peculiar family dynamic, Mark and James adore Linda.
They were very devoted to their mother. Whether they knew it or not, they would do anything she told them to do.
Linda is the glue that holds this family together. She is the reason that everyone does anything in context with one another.
To support his family, James works at a local factory,
James was married with 3 kids.
while Mark has a different career.
Mark had a girlfriend, and he worked at the newspaper in town.
But the brothers have ulterior motives in life.
At nighttime, Mark and James were only interested in watching shows and movies where people were getting hurt and death was happening all over the place.
Mark often fantasizes about becoming a real-life action star.
Mark would like his life to be like a Michael Bay movie. He wants the fast cars, he wants the beautiful women, and he's perfectly fine with there being violence in it.
His brother James is more interested in pulling off the perfect crime.
James is into crime books, into crime series. What intrigues James about these criminals is the idea that you could commit the perfect crime and get away with it.
But the brothers do have one mutual obsession: the hit television show CSI.
James loved watching CSI, and he fantasized about being the kind of character involved with the show.
The brothers think that CSI was some sort of master course in becoming a professional criminal. Their DVD boxes should have come with a warning. Don't try this at home.
Why do we like criminal shows that put us in the criminal mind? We all love a mystery. You're looking in how police and how detectives work, which is fascinating, of how they solve a murder.
But in this family, three's a crowd.
Andrew could not care less about the guns, about the money, about the fast cars. He wants different things from his half-brothers. He behaves differently. He's not interested in what they're interested in.
Andrew was the black sheep of his family. He didn't get along very well with his brothers, James and Mark, and that could have been because the two would gang up on him.
These two brothers, both highly aggressive, they prided themselves on being alpha males. Andrew just became a scapegoat because Andrew was a good guy. Andrew didn't lie. Andrew didn't steal. Andrew liked people. Andrew wanted to belong.
The only thing these brothers can agree on is the adoration for their mother, Linda.
The love for their mother, Linda, did bring them together or kept them at least civil to one another.
But that agreement is about to be broken. In the summer of 1998, Mark comes up with a plan to develop his tough guy persona.
Mark's image of himself was that he was, if you could call it this, a criminal wannabe. And one of the things he thought a great deal about was doing criminal acts.
Mark had been bathed in the ideas that power is given to the aggressor. And if you're an aggressor with a gun, you are near a god. He decides to stick up a post office.
Put the money in the bag! Hurry up! Put the money in the bag! Get on the ground! Get down! Put the money in the bag! Hurry up!
If anyone would speculate about the type of individual Mark is, this was just the beginning.
Let's go! Quicker, faster, let's go! Come on!
Things like this, these type of traits, don't just happen overnight. This was part of his ingrained personality. This was someone who was a threat to society, no doubt.
Come on, let's go!
But Mark's robbery is interrupted.
What are you doing?
Mark thought that he would walk into that post office and walk out with a bunch of cash. All he had to do was show that gun, and he thought he could get whatever he wanted. But it didn't work out that way. The post office robbery did not go well, did not go as planned. Mark leaves there and he hasn't even stolen anything.
Although Mark doesn't make a cent from the heist, he is able to successfully evade capture from the police.
The fact that he didn't get anything, that's irrelevant. He still got away not being identified, and that was enough for Mark. Mark comes home and tells his brother James that he's just tried to rob a post office.
Dude, do you remember that post office I was scoping out? Well, I decided to hit it today.
And he's really amped up about this. He's proud of himself and he feels powerful.
I said, put that money in the bag.
He takes great pleasure in showing off the 9mm gun he used in that robbery attempt.
I started hearing sirens.
You left the money.
Mark thinks he's in the clear, but he's just told his oldest brother Andrew his darkest secret.
I think Mark felt he could bully Andrew, he could pick on Andrew. There still was this sense that, hey, I'm a tough guy, I'm a gangster, I'm a criminal.
But Andrew's conscience gets the best of him.
Andrew's instinct on hearing his brother confess this attempted robbery is that he should probably alert the authorities.
Andrew knows he has to do the right thing, but he's still very scared about it. He knows his half-brother loves guns and can be very violent, so he's taking a big risk here. Who knows what Mark could do to Andrew?
And it's not just Mark that is on Andrew's mind.
Andrew's scared because he doesn't want to wreck his family He doesn't want to hurt his mother.
Still, Andrew can't help but feel guilty anytime he thinks about Mark's robbery.
He's holding on to this information that he knows is wrong, but he's conflicted because there's a loyalty, but then there's a true need to tell the police.
After much debate, Andrew's guilty conscience gets the best of him.
It was more important for him to do what was right instead of what might have made his mother feel better.
I happened to overhear my brother, my half-brother, talking about how he was at the post office that day.
In Andrew's mind, his half-brother may have been a walking time bomb, and he needed to go to the police.
Staying silent about Mark's crime would be illegal. But for Andrew, ratting his brother out to the cops might mean he's digging his own grave.
He also is afraid of what his brother might do to him or have done to him. Mark and Andrew have never been very close, and Andrew's been afraid of Mark for a very long time.
What's at stake? Everything. The family, and ultimately, Andrew's life.
Andrew Scanlan is harboring a dangerous secret.
I said, put that money in the bag.
One that threatens to tear his own family apart.
Andrew is home when his younger half-brother, Mark, bursts in the door and starts boasting about trying to rob a post office.
It didn't go very well. He wound up taking nothing away. However, he counted it as a victory because he was never identified and he wasn't stopped, and he did get away scot-free.
The information isn't surprising to Andrew. His brothers Mark and James seemed destined for the criminal life.
Mark and James think that they've watched enough CSI that they can defeat forensic science and create the perfect crime. What Mark and James don't know is that that's fiction, and this is reality.
Out of the three brothers, Andrew has always been the third wheel.
He was afraid of his brothers and seemed to take pains to not be around them as often as he could. Andrew's torn, though, whether he should actually turn in his brother. He doesn't want to hurt his mom and break her heart.
Ultimately, Andrew decides to do the right thing.
Andrew decides to tell the police what he knows.
I happened to overhear my brother, my half-brother, talking about how he was at the post office that day.
He let them know that Mark had made an attempt to rob a post office and that he had a 9mm gun when he did it.
Andrew knows that this is going to cause terrible turmoil in his family, but I think that Andrew knew that he had to do the right thing and that he would feel guilty forever if he didn't.
The authorities immediately turn to Mark as their #1 suspect.
The police on investigation find out that, yes, Mark was the attempted robber.
Mark is arrested and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison.
This was a huge blow to Andrew's family. They were all devastated by the fact that Mark was arrested and sent to prison. Andrew doesn't realize what he's done, but he's put his own life in jeopardy.
Over his incarceration period, Mark develops a deep, ingrained hatred for his half-brother Andrew.
Mark has 4.5 years to think about little else than how much he hates his brother. He blames his brother for his situation. He thinks that if his brother hadn't gone to the police, he never would be behind bars.
In Mark's mind, his trust to his brother was now being punished. So that created a tremendous amount of anger and resentment, which really, truly developed into thoughts of revenge.
In prison, Mark writes a letter to his girlfriend, fuming about his brother's actions and threatening his life.
In jail, Mark sends his girlfriend a letter and he says, "If I find Andrew, he's dead."
It's all Mark is thinking about in prison, day after day after day after day. How he can seek his revenge, how he can get even with Andrew.
Mark serves his time and is released. He claims to be rehabilitated.
Mark comes out of jail and tells everyone that he's changed. While he was once a violent man, now he's a pacifist. He wants to volunteer. He wants to join the local ambulance corps to show everyone that he's changed.
When Mark gets out, he doesn't act immediately on his anger. He has learned how to manipulate, how to maneuver, how to get over on other people. So he tells everybody he's a changed person once he's released. He tells everyone that he's a pacifist now. But really, it's all an act.
One day, Andrew visits Mark in an attempt to fix their relationship.
Mark blames Andrew. He thinks Andrew's the reason that he was in jail. So it's even more stinging to him that his half-brother was able to live a normal, productive life while he rotted away behind bars.
While Mark's life stopped dead in its tracks, Andrew's flourished.
After Mark's stay in prison, things were pretty good for Andrew. He was living with a girlfriend. His life was continuing on a normal and happy path for him. On the other hand, Mark was struggling to rebuild himself and rebuild his life after he was incarcerated for the crime that his brother told authorities about.
Tensions between Andrew and Mark are beyond repair.
What are you doing here?
I need to apologize.
No.
There's a reason why his brother Andrew feared him. There's a reason why Andrew was very, very cautious about when he was around his brothers, and in particular, Mark.
You're not welcome here. You're never welcome here. Don't ever come back.
There is only one person keeping the family from falling apart.
Their mother, Linda, is the linchpin holding this family together.
But when Linda is diagnosed with cancer, everything changes.
Are you doing okay?
So although these men prided themselves on being very macho and masculine and alpha males, they still had a very, very strong alliance to their mother.
Everyone is concerned for Linda's well-being.
That cancer diagnosis might as well have been a death sentence for the family, too. The cancer causes the rift between Andrew and his half-brothers to widen.
The brothers blame Andrew for their mother's illness.
Mark and James believe that the stress of Mark's incarceration caused their mother to take ill and decline. They believe that if Andrew had never said anything, their mom might still be healthy and thriving.
Unfortunately, when a parent is dying, it's very easy for siblings to blame other siblings. We're in so much emotional pain that we look for an easy answer, and that is what James and Mark did to Andrew. They blamed him, and they then regained more rage and more anger that they could direct at him.
Linda tries her hardest to keep her family intact, but on October 18th, 2006, everything changes.
Linda eventually does lose her battle with cancer. She dies. After Linda's death, the family imploded on itself.
James and Mark never liked Andrew. They never liked him when they were children. They never liked him when they were teenagers. They never liked him when he turned in Mark. And Mark had to go to prison. And now they truly hate him because he caused their mother to die in their minds.
Andrew! Andrew, open the door!
For a family already teetering on the edge, Linda's death is the final straw.
Where do you think you're going?
Mom's funeral.
Speak her name. You don't ever come around us anymore. You don't come to this funeral. If I see you there, I'll kill you.
Once their mother was dead, James and Mark, after justifying their rage, could really let it explode onto Andrew. Mark went to Andrew's house to warn him not to come to their mother's funeral. It's incredibly extreme, incredibly cold, and very callous.
After Linda dies, James and Mark declare that Andrew is dead to them. They want no parts of him, and he is no longer part of the family.
In the weeks that follow, James and Mark can think of nothing else besides getting even with their half-brother.
Mark and James, for all their flaws and faults, love their mother. And if somebody hurt her, there's no greater sin. It's a deadly sin.
The brothers want to punish Andrew for everything they believe he's done. And lucky for them, they watch a television show that reads like a textbook on how to get away with murder. It's called CSI, Crime Scene Investigation.
CSI is a crime investigation show involving a forensic team that's trying to solve a murder.
For the brothers, CSI is a gateway into the criminal mind, a how-to when it comes to planning the perfect murder.
By this time, the brothers are watching CSI religiously. It's pretty much on all the time in the evenings, and that's all they're interested in looking at.
They actually start to think that they can commit the perfect crime, that they can get away with what no guest star on CSI ever did.
James and Mark decide the only way to make Andrew pay for what he's done to the family is to kill him.
Linda was Andrew's protection. And once she's gone, there's only a matter of time before Mark has his revenge.
Brothers Mark and James Baigent are planning their revenge on their older half-brother Andrew.
Andrew turned his half-brother Mark in as soon as he learned that Mark had tried to rob a post office. Because of Andrew going to the police, Mark is arrested and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison.
The brothers also blame Andrew for their mother's death.
The brothers blame their mother's cancer and her death from that disease on the stress of Andrew telling police that Mark had tried to rob a post office.
The fact that both of these brothers were against Andrew just bonded them more. They had a focus to their aggressive behaviors because they hated Andrew.
James and Mark believe they can murder Andrew without getting caught, all thanks to their favorite television show, CSI.
CSI is a crime show that involves forensic teams trying to investigate murder.
Each week, millions of viewers tune in to watch their favorite crime scene investigators crack the case.
I think CSI was so popular because no matter how difficult a case might seem, there is always the smallest shred of evidence that can lead back to the culprit.
The show's popularity even changes the way real juries deliberate a case during trial.
Prosecutors have named it the CSI effect. Now, more people are interested in the forensic evidence. Everyone wants to know about the DNA findings and what the forensic team has to add to the investigation.
From watching the show CSI, Mark and James know they need to plan every detail of Andrew's murder, if they're going to get away with it.
The brothers also think a key to the perfect murder is to lure their brother Andrew to a secluded place. The plan is that when they get Andrew to the secret spot, they're going to kill him, they're going to cut off his head, remove his hands, and that way there will be no way for this body to be identified.
After months of researching and binge-watching CSI, the brothers believe they have an untraceable plan. But to get away with murder, they will need help.
They don't feel they could commit the crime themselves. They felt they needed a third person to help them.
What's the plan?
James and Mark bring in a friend named Jeff Woods.
Jeff Woods is James's friend. He says he served in Iraq, in Syria, that he's a martial arts expert, and that he works as a bouncer. You want a guy like Jeff Woods on your side. He's always ready to throw down with violence. He's not afraid of being in a fight.
The brothers approach Jeff and ask for his assistance.
James asked Jeff, out of the blue, "Will you help us kill my brother?" Most people would probably not react the way Jeff did. Jeff was down for the cause. He agreed and said he was a willing participant.
What it tells us about Jeff Woods is, my gosh, who are you friends with? When you ask, will you help us kill our brother? And the person agrees instantaneously, boy, you really know how to choose your friends. Like-minded people find each other.
Like an episode of CSI, Andrew's murder plot is taking shape.
They have their plan, they have their manpower. Now they need supplies.
In their favorite crime show, DNA evidence brings down even the most professional killers.
Investigators are getting evidence and DNA from the crime scenes in any episode of the show. They'll match that evidence to a suspect or maybe someone that they didn't even realize that they should be looking at in the case.
James knows from CSI that he can't leave any DNA behind if he wants to get away with the crime. He also knows his brother will likely put up a fight.
A staple plot element in a lot of the episodes of CSI is that the victim will struggle, and sometimes he or she will scratch or dig at their murderer. Because of that, DNA evidence is left under the fingernails. The brothers believe that they can eliminate any possibility of struggle by simply handcuffing Andrew.
It's only natural for them to want to bring latex gloves, which also will keep skin cells from getting onto the crime scene.
This was a thought-out plan. This was not something spontaneous. This was not something based on impulse. This took a considerable amount of time. They were going to succeed.
In CSI, the investigators uncover every significant detail when trying to solve a crime.
Nothing gets by the CSI teams because they put in a lot of effort with each case and they refuse to give up until they find whoever's responsible.
But in real life, James and Mark believe they will always be one step ahead of the police. And 1 month after they lose their beloved mother, Linda, the brothers lure Andrew out of his house with a fake story about her will.
The brothers show up at Andrew's house, and they concede that, well, yes, you've been dead to us, but we need help with our mother's will. And if you come and provide this help to us, we'll give you money. Andrew agrees because he could use the money, and he feels like this is something that he could do because he loved their mother.
Despite years of bullying by his brothers, Andrew gets in the car.
Here we have Andrew, who was threatened by both his brothers, who was told he could not go to his mother's funeral. He was incredibly optimistic, and that is really, unfortunately, his downfall. He believed his brothers, and maybe even he wanted to believe that they had forgiven him. They were luring him to his death by using their mother in a way to help manipulate him.
Andrew hopes this might be the beginning of a family reconciliation.
Andrew has no idea that just like in the CSI shows, he is one commercial break away from his own grisly murder.
James and Mark Baigent are driving their older half-brother Andrew in the clutches of a copycat crime. Motivated by the television crime series CSI, the brothers think they know how to get away with murder.
The brothers blame Andrew for their mother's death from cancer.
This was a thought-out plan. James, Mark, and Jeff spent hours watching television, watching CSI. They wanted to figure out what would be the perfect murder.
During CSI's 15-season run, the fictional crime lab took down many criminals who thought they could get away with murder.
Even if there's a situation where there are just a million fingerprints on a crime scene, somehow the team is able to get down to that one set of fingerprints that they can connect to someone involved with the crime, and it's It's a daunting task, but they manage to pull it off every episode.
James and Mark believe they've watched enough episodes of CSI to pull off a flawless murder.
They went around and purchased a UV light. They went around and purchased tape. They went and got the tools they needed in order to make this the perfect murder.
They lure their brother, Andrew, out of his house and into their car. But along the way, Andrew becomes suspicious.
After they get Andrew, Mark and James pick up their friend, Jeff Woods. Once Jeff gets in the car, the wheels start turning in Andrew's mind. Something is wrong.
At this point, Andrew is starting to question what's really going on here. If this is something Will-related, why is there some strange guy around? And why aren't they getting to the Will stuff? What are they driving around for?
Mark can sense Andrew is getting anxious. He knows the time to strike is now. The men pull over on the side of the road and force Andrew out of the car.
Andrew is out of the car, and now Mark and James's plan kicks into high gear.
Where are we?
Andrew now recognizes that this whole thing, this whole setup about their mother's will, was just a ruse to get him in a vulnerable position.
Let's do this.
They pull out a knife, and they handcuff Andrew.
Okay, you don't need to do. Jeez, shut up.
And now he's in a remote place and nobody knows he's there except his brothers.
They take him deep into the woods so Mark can have his revenge.
Mark, James, and Jeff also put on gloves so they won't leave behind any fingerprints.
The men know from CSI that fingerprints often lead to an arrest. Andrew tries to escape, but he's trapped.
His whole life has been to be bullied and picked on, and now there's 3 guys against him.
Give him the bat.
They have him with no escape, in isolation. All he can do is plead with them for his life.
But Andrew's cries go unnoticed. The men viciously attack him.
These are 2 guys that are fueling their revenge with rage. What they got out of the murder is justification that we have avenged our mother's death.
The beating doesn't kill Andrew, so Mark steps in. This is Mark's moment. He finally has his revenge by breaking Andrew's neck. Even though Andrew is dead, these 3 guys are going to engage in overkill. James takes a knife and stabs Andrew.
That's right.
From watching the crime show CSI, the brothers know that killers often dismember bodies to thwart investigations.
Investigators on CSI are always stymied by bodies that are dismembered and put in different locations. So Mark and James believe they need to dismember Andrew's body to make their crime impossible to solve.
The CSI-obsessed siblings decide to cut off Andrew's head and his hands because they believe that with no teeth or fingerprints, this body will never be identified.
Now they dig 2 holes. In one hole goes Andrew's head and his hands. The other hole is for Andrew's torso and the rest of his body.
Then the brothers take Andrew's wallet and cell phone and flee the scene.
After killing Andrew, this trio feels like they are going to get away with murder.
But committing the perfect crime is easier seen on TV than executed in real life.
James recognizes at this point that they've forgotten something. Andrew was riding in the car. So Andrew's hair fibers, his clothing fibers, are probably evidence in that vehicle if the police ever search it. So they need to make sure that those fibers are removed from the vehicle.
Andrew wouldn't have had any reason to be in his half-brother James's car. He was scared of both his half-brothers. So evidence that Andrew was in the car at all would immediately be suspicious.
On the show, the lead investigators used tape to remove incriminating evidence from the vehicle's interior. Andrew's brothers mimic CSI.
Mark and James go about cleaning their car of any evidence by wrapping their hands in tape and using it to pick up any stray hairs or fibers that might be in the car's interior.
And again, they enlist more help.
It may be shocking, but James's wife, Charlotte, isn't on this plan. She agrees to help clean out the car and get rid of hair and fabric fibers that could tie Andrew to being in that vehicle. In addition, it's Charlotte that does the laundry. She washes the bloody clothes.
It's shocking how many people were in on this scheme. Andrew meant nothing to them.
After the brothers think they've eliminated all traces of Andrew inside the car, James takes one final precaution.
They use Andrew's cell phone to send a fake text message to his girlfriend so that she'll think he's gone for a few days.
It is the same tactic that criminals often use in CSI.
They think that lie is going to further buy them more time to get away with whatever they need to do to make sure that they don't get caught for this perfect murder that they've concocted.
But just when the brothers think they are in the clear, their crime is exposed.
Charlotte's best friend throws her a birthday party. And at that birthday party, Charlotte gets very, very drunk. And as a result of that, she gets belligerent and she gets into a fight with another guest.
Hi, no one else. My husband could kill your husband.
Charlotte claims that her husband could kill another lady's husband because he's already done it before.
The Baigent brothers thought they had killed and gotten away with it.
James and Mark should have learned from watching CSI that there is always going to be something that you don't think of. There's always going to be a way for a dedicated investigator to tie you to a crime.
Andrew.
Mark and James Baigent have killed their older brother Andrew in a violent murder based on revenge.
Inspired by the show CSI, Mark and James thought that they had done everything necessary to eliminate the forensic evidence. They wore gloves, they handcuffed Andrew so he couldn't fight back, and they dismembered his body.
But the brothers made one fatal mistake. They enlisted help.
Jeff is a friend of the brothers. He helps to kill Andrew, and then he helps to conceal the evidence after the fact. And James's wife, Charlotte, helps them clean up after the murder.
And now, after months of planning the perfect crime, Charlotte has exposed their dark
My
secret.
husband could kill your husband.
Charlotte has a few too many drinks at her birthday and gets into a fight with another guest. She threatens this guest, and someone overhears her saying that her husband killed Andrew.
Andrew? Yeah, Andrew.
Although the police aren't aware of Charlotte's confession, what the brothers don't realize is that Andrew's girlfriend has reported him missing.
Andrew's girlfriend doesn't believe that the texts that came to her were actually from Andrew. She goes to police and reports him missing, and they start to look into, well, where is he then?
And that leads the police to put a trace on Andrew's bank account. So because that trace is on Andrew's bank account, about a month later, when someone withdraws cash from the account using Andrew's card, the homicide detectives are notified.
Like the investigators on CSI, Detectives immediately interview those closest to Andrew, including his girlfriend.
Andrew's girlfriend tells police about the text message, but she also tells them that the last time she saw Andrew, he was leaving in a car with Mark and James.
The detectives went and talked to Andrew's brothers. The two brothers are of no help to authorities. They lie and say they have no idea about Andrew's whereabouts. The brothers also claim that they were nowhere near Andrew around the time he went missing.
But the police aren't buying it.
Despite their innocent protests, police feel like something is off here. They don't believe the brothers' story at all, that they know nothing about Andrew's disappearance.
They go check phone records, and the phone records tell an incredible story. Mark, James, and Andrew were all within the same area the night Andrew disappeared, and their phone records prove it.
The brothers may have used their love of CSI to cover their physical trail, but they didn't realize they left a digital one.
Detectives are able to use the cell phones to trace their locations, and it shows that Mark, James, and Andrew were all heading to the same place at the same time. They were in the car together.
Cell records also confirm that James's friend, Jeff Woods, was near them.
In the course of the investigations, police see that James's phone has called a particular number a number of times around the time of Andrew's disappearance. They find that that number belongs to Jeff, and that's how they connect him to the brothers.
Detectives bring Jeff in for questioning.
Jeff Woods is a big, tough martial arts instructor, supposed military veteran and bouncer, but once they get him into the interrogation room, he completely cracks. He tells them everything they want to know.
I did not want to get involved with this, believe me.
I think Jeff cracked because there's every reason to crack. He didn't have any alliance to these guys. He knew, and he was going to be spending a lot of time in prison unless he did sell them out.
James, Mark, and Jeff are arrested for the murder of Andrew Scanlan.
During the trial, Mark tries to blame Jeff. He says that he was joking around about wanting Andrew dead. Jeff took it seriously, and Jeff did all the dirty work.
But that isn't the only twist in this evil family crime.
In addition to all this, it comes out that Jeff has been having an affair with James's wife, Charlotte. Jeff screwed James coming and going. He got him connected to the murder plot, and he broke up his marriage.
Just like the most evil criminals on their favorite show, CSI, Mark, James, and Jeff are found guilty of murder.
Their sentence is life in prison, but they will be eligible for parole. For James, that comes in 24 years. For Mark, 22 years. Jeff Woods, he's eligible for parole after 20 years.
Just like almost every episode of CSI, the cops get their man, and sometimes women. Charlotte, for her part in the crime, was sentenced to a year in jail.
During each hour-long episode of CSI, the Las Vegas Crime Lab investigators catch the criminal and solve the case.
Mark and James made the same mistake as every CSI guest star ever. They thought they would get away with it. They thought they had thought of everything. They thought that they had committed the perfect crime. They were wrong.
Although Mark and James became what they always aspired to be, criminals, in the end, they fell victim to the one thing they never planned for: human error.
What I think is you have a situation in a family which is two brothers against one, and they never let up. And they systematically, first emotionally, and then ultimately murder a part of their family